Welcome to Out of the Box on Squawk Box. It has never been easy to put a dollar figure on just how much a brand is worth. But most will agree that for any brand to have maximum value and to provide a return to the owners of that brand, then its values have to be well and truly integrated into every aspect of company culture. Our next guest tells us that brands need special care when the company is dealing with internal changes. Joseph Baladi is the CEO of Carlyle Brand Consultants, and he's here with me this morning in our Singapore studios. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
It's good to have you here with us. One of the interesting things is that companies do spend a lot of time marketing their brand and their brand values and what it says about the company to an external audience. Do they tend to neglect it internally?
To some degree, yeah. I think that in Asia, things are beginning to change. The whole notion that people within a company need to understand brand dynamics and the brand promise and be in line with it is still relatively alien. But things are changing. I'm very optimistic about CEOs beginning to see that competitive advantage can in fact be gotten through this way.
Okay, so we're talking here today about why it's important to communicate brand values, brand strategy, brand definition to employees, on an internal basis when it comes to the organization undergoing some sort of big changes. What kind of changes would this be?
Well, I mean, typically what a lot of companies are engaging in right now are large-scale IT implementation processes. Programs like ERP, knowledge management, CRM, extremely important, extremely ambitious, and very difficult generally and typically to undertake. What we say to our clients is ensure that this essentially ambitious project is actually driven by strategy or strategic thinking. And what we say at Carlyle is that it needs to be driven by the branding process.
Joseph, it's Bernard in Hong Kong. One phenomenon in the market these days is, instead of trying to build brands from scratch, which would be a phenomenal undertaking of massive financial considerations, there's a lot of merger and acquisition activity that's been going on. So you have lines being blurred in terms of branding. Often you have companies that own competing brands with outlets on the same street. That certainly complexifies the entire issue and makes it more difficult to differentiate, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly is. It just highlights also the importance of portfolio management and brand architecture, understanding how one brand relates to another.
I want to bring up some pictures right now. We went out and took some shots over at one of the companies that you've worked with, HTL International. This is a furniture maker based here in Singapore. What did you say to them about their brand when they were undergoing their organization, their structural changes?
HTL International is a great example of the kind of work we're talking about because they actually get it. They understand the need to integrate a large program, IT program of the top we talked about. They're actually about to engage in an ERP program. We have been working with them for the last 10 months, defining and refining their brand positioning. We're about to filter that into the company. And what we're doing right now is working very closely with a top 5 consultancy that's actually being empowered to begin this massive change across all of the departments. But they recognize that it has to be driven by the brand positioning, because the brand positioning is essentially about the strategy of the company moving forward.
Can you give us an example of what you mean by the brand driving the implementation of this ERP or CRM or anything like that?
Well, these kind of programs essentially are about changing the very DNA of a company. It goes all the way down to all the individual departments of a company: marketing, planning, HR, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when you're talking about changing the DNA of a company, you're essentially talking about changing the very identity of a company. When you talk about the very identity of the company, you talk about the brand. And essentially the brand of the company moving forward has got to be driven by the strategy, the vision of the company. And the vision of the CEO and the management moving forward. And that's what we work in. That is defined and equally driven by the brand positioning. How customers outside of the company view the company and other stakeholders view the company. As much as the employees, we always come back to the internal dynamics of a company.
What I'm actually trying to get at is a sense of how things will be different before and after Carlyle has gone in there.
Well, rather than implement their current ERP program independently or in a vacuum and simply look for optimization of individual departments, individual process and procedures, we will walk in there first and we will look at some of the process and procedures that need to be influenced by the brand itself. What we try and do is enable employees to live the brand. And to do that, we need to be understanding some of the process and procedures, what we call level 1. Once we have those in place, they drive then, they give a sense of direction, a roadmap for the ERP programs and the large programs and other programs actually to be implemented in a much more directional way.
This sounds expensive.
The IT programs or the branding programs?
No, the branding programs.
Well, relatively speaking, given the valuations of companies, ultimately, it's really a drop in the ocean. However, it's an ongoing process, and the projects we engage in can typically take up to 10 months, 12 months.
A lot of time spent on that. So if any CEOs want to do that, they should start planning now. Thank you very much for being with us this morning. Joseph Baladi, CEO of Carlyle Brand Consultants, here with us in Singapore. We seem to have a microphone failure there. Shall I give everyone the sports news today, Colette? Okay, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back to you in just a couple of minutes.
The segment you've just